Hello everyone, my name is Sean and I'm with Integrity Data. In today's video, I'm going to walk through and show you what it's like to process payroll directly in Business Central. To start, as you can see, this is a Business Central environment, and under the actions, we already have some payroll functions penned. This is because our payroll product is directly integrated within the Business Central environment. So you don't have to worry about logging into multiple systems or having custom connections created to integrate your payroll data with your financials, such as your general ledgers or your accounts payable. Not only can you customize the payroll actions here so that way you can quickly navigate to individual payroll functions and pages, but we also have a full payroll menu that you can navigate that allows you to see every related payroll function in one place. To get started, let's actually go into the payroll employee section. Now in this section, this is where you're going to be able to manage all of your employee information in one place. So as you can see, if we scroll to the right, there's all of the data relating to the employees just on this one screen. And of course, you can customize these views. But we also have Pilar here highlighted. So any of the actions up on the top and any of the information on this right side info panel is going to be directly related to Pilar without having to drill into her profile specifically. So if we wanted to quickly look at her salary information, we can just click on the salary tab here, and now we see all of her current salary data. One of the nice things to note about our payroll service is that it leverages BC functionality. The key point here being that you can actually have everything be set with effective dates. So not only does that mean that you can see previous information, such as her salary from 2023, but you can set a salary for the future. In this case, we have one that's set to go into effect in November. And then what's going to happen is that on November 3rd, any payroll information relating to this salary is going to be automatically updated and applied. So you can take that sticky note off your computer. You no longer have to worry about actually implementing those things directly. Taking a step back, if we go onto the right side here, you can see some of these employee statistics. Of course, we have things like posted payroll documents, PTO data, and year-to-date earnings. But if we drill into the posted payroll document section, for example, you can see every single posted payroll that they've had. You can reverse those documents, print a check stub or email one, and then of course you can even reissue a check from a new date. And again, anything that's highlighted, these buttons are going to affect. You can even select multiple ones if you needed to. Of course, we can drill into a document further from here, and you still have these same options, but now you can also see that additional information. And it was just a couple of clicks away from the employee screen. Now, going back to the employee data, let's drill into Pilar's profile. Here, we can see that we not only have all of her information, but if we scroll down, we have things like her emergency contacts and all of this administrative data. So not only do we have things like their hire date, but you can set them as inactive. Of course, you can terminate them. You can even customize things such as their payroll division or department. Going further, we do have sections to be able to identify union information as well as their personal details. And we of course have that salary information in tables. We do also have the ability to set multiple direct deposits, so that way you can split those direct deposit earnings and their preference. Lastly, we do have the ability to set and customize user-defined fields. In this case, we have them set as earnings for housing allowance and vehicle allowances. Scrolling back up, we do have options to be able to see things like their salary, PTO, deductions, and withholding setup. And if we actually drill into that information here, you can see and customize what their current PTO is, for example. And then you can even see how that's configured and set. Now, based on their payroll division, You can even have these be automatically applied upon hire, so that way you're not having to go in and create a new PTO plan each time, and instead it's tied to these pre-made earnings codes that you see here. Going into deductions now, we'll start with 401ks. A couple of important things to note are that the 401ks themselves can be set similarly with those same codes that I just demonstrated in regards to the PTO. So you wouldn't have to come in here and customize and set up their 401k for this employee specifically each time you hire someone. Instead, if you just have general 401k elections, you can have that be set, and then they can select and you can customize if need be what the amounts for contributions are. We also have default rules already set. So for example, we have the employee deduction limits and you see that it's grayed out. This is going to be information that we update and maintain for you as it changes on a federal level. This will also, of course, apply to federal and state withholdings, such as your income tax withholding tables. So if we go into garnishments now, you'll notice that you can not only customize what the actual garnishment setup is. So for this child support garnishment, for example, you can set an amount per pay period. You can also set if it's going to be a percent of their disposable earnings. One of the other nice things to note is that you can customize this code so that way it has different rules and priorities applied to it. So if you had a maximum percent of net pay that it could be, or if it had to be first in a order of garnishments, all of those logics can actually be built in ahead of time and automatically applied as you assign these garnishments to employees. Now, drilling into this person, we also, of course, have things like the federal withholding setup and the state withholding setup. These are going to be elections that are made within the HR system whenever they are hired. You, of course, can also manually add those or configure them if need be. Last but not least, we also have the analysis tool. Now, this is a tool that's native to the Business Central environment, but it can be used to filter and create custom reporting for any of the data on the screen. So, for example, we have all of the employee data here, and this is the exact same as what we had shown before. But you can customize and filter this to be whatever information you wanted. So say, for example, you didn't want to see first names and you only wanted to see the employee number, the last name. You can just turn it off. And that information is now hidden. And of course, you can turn it back on. You can also reorder where that information is going to be. And then using the analysis filters, you can search any of the information that you want. So if we just go to first name, for example, we can filter it down to a single employee, in this case, Pilar. And now you have just that employee's information. But you could also create reports for things like your hire date. Maybe you want to group employees by state or salary type. You can not only create these reports, but you can save them, rename them, and then even export that data to Excel. Now that we've had a chance to be able to review the employee information, let's look at entering time information. So we're going to go to the hours detail entry section. Now, here in hours details entry, we're already going to have this data imported. The primary goal that Integrity Data has is having data consistency, so that way you don't need to be able to take data from one place and manually key it into another. So whether you're using our time tracking system or you have another one, we have options for using things like REST APIs to be able to integrate and actually transfer that data and fill it in. A couple of things to note with the time card information here. We can have it be broken down by date within the pay period. We can also, of course, have gross information if you just wanted to have all the data for a single pay period instead of having it broken down by day. We, of course, can also have additional information. So not only do we have the employee identifying information, such as their name and number, we have earnings codes associated with that. So in this case, it's all regular, but you can have things like overtime, PTO, piece rates. You'll also see who entered the information. And then for the purpose of this demonstration, we have department codes, business groups, job numbers, tasks, the state that this was recorded in, prevailing wage codes. We can not only add this information, but also customize it to meet your business's needs. So that way you're only having what is necessary and not superfluous. Now, if we go to the report section here, we do have an hours details report. It's just going to be a simple one that shows you the breakdown of the different types of earnings based on the employee. So we have regular and we have total, but this is also where you would see things like overtime and PTO. You can also use Power Automate and create different flows to be able to analyze and export this information. And then, of course, you can leverage the analysis tool again. So in this case, I had one pre-built to show me all hours that are less than 8. So that way I can look at anything that might be in particular that could be possibly an exception that might need to be reviewed. But once the hours detail entries is validated, you've updated the time, you've verified that it's all correct, now it's time to process a payroll batch. So we're going to go to batch payroll processing, and we're going to click on new here. Now, a couple things to note about a payroll batch while it's being created. You'll have the different pay cycles that you can select from. In this case, this demo is biweekly. And then you will select from the open pay periods that remain. Now, you can also customize the formula, and these will, of course, be set up during implementation. So if you had a specific way that you needed the taxes broken down that might be different, you can have like regular bonus, but there also might be other cases where you need to have a separate one. This is where you can select those different payroll calculations. Other things to note are that you can filter it by a specific group or employee. So if you wanted to pay just your salary employees with one payroll batch and your hourly with another, you can definitely do that. You can also do it by things like position code, department, union codes, and then even down to a specific employee number or posting group. For the purpose of this demo, we only have about 15 employees, so we're just going to be processing it with everyone together. Now, what this is showing is it's doing the actual batch calculation and creation at the same time. And this is an error that's just saying that we already have payment information for this employee, and if we wanted to move forward. In this case, we will. And we will skip it for any other employees. So now it is actually building the batch and doing the calculations. As you see, it's taking about 1 second per employee, and the batch itself is going to be fully calculated and ready. So now that this has been populated and created, we effectively have a complete payroll that is just ready to be reviewed and then processed. Now, as we were looking at before, currently the line with Pilar is highlighted. So if we go to things like the report, or if we go to related information, this is all going to be for just this individual. But of course, we can select additional people or the entire group. So going back to Pilar, I always like to go into the payroll document. What this is going to show is the fully calculated payroll document for this employee. So you'll see all their earnings, and deductions, withholdings, and employer taxes. But what's really great about this is the fact that you can actually edit this information in real time and have it recalculate without having to reprocess the batch. So say you notice that this vehicle allowance should have been $100 instead. You can simply come here and make that one-time change. And now all the rest of the tax information has been automatically updated and recalculated. Now, typically, you need to be able to make a more permanent type of change. Like maybe you realized that you had to add a different type of garnishment that wasn't showing on this pay period. You can simply click on the employee card up here. And then going back to their employee section, as we had just previously reviewed, you can update and change any of that information. And based on the effective date, it will be applied to this pay period. To show this in action, I like to actually update this vehicle allowance just because it's the easiest to quickly update since it is a user-defined field. Notice that it's still $100. We're going to resuggest the lines now that that change has been made. and now it's $250 and will be until there's another update, as well as everything else, of course, changing. And if we go back, we're still in the same payroll batch. So we didn't affect anyone else. We didn't have to recalculate the batch. Looking over our reports, we do have a couple of pre-made tools, such as an open batch check register report. We also have the open batch register report where you can compare the details. We can, of course, have an open batch hours details report, so you can just see the breakdown of that hourly income. And then one that a lot of clients enjoy is the batch comparison. So that way you can actually compare this batch to a previous one that you know might be a little bit more consistent to compare any anomalies. We, of course, do have PTO accrual reports, either by the batch or by an individual document. And then we have a pre-made one for documents with insufficient net pay. Again, particularly helpful if you have multiple garnishments or if you're doing any sort of arrears tracking. If we go to the Open Batch Register report and preview this one, for example, you'll see that this is just a very high-level report of the data that is currently shown on the batch. And of course, anything that we change would be reflected in real time if you were to update it and rerun the report. Now, as far as actually processing payroll, you'll just go to Actions, and then you can export that Nacha file so that way you can download that and send it to your bank. You, of course, can print checks and void any checks if you needed to. You also have options for printing check stubs or emailing them to the email on file in the employee card. And then you can simply post payroll. Once those actions are done, the payroll will close and the batch will be moved over to the ledgers. What that looks like is if we go to payroll ledger entries, you would see every individual line item for all posted payrolls for every employee. We also have the various reports here. So if you go to the report section, you can run a payroll check register report from this section. You can also look at things such as your state or federal income tax reports, SUTA or FUTA, local reports, and of course have things like your 941 reconciliation. We do also offer services for certified payroll reporting, which is one of the reasons why that time import is so specific. Again, I want to point out the importance of the analysis mode because this being your ledger, this is your 100% source of truth. So if you needed to review or update any of this information, this tool can show you literally anything that you would need to know about your payroll ledger entries. Finally, once everything has been reconciled and it's time to actually start making those tax payments and filings, you would just go to the US tax report section here, and we have pre-made reports for everything that you see, 941s, 940s, W-2s, W-3s, and of course even 943s. To just take a quick look at that, we're going to run a 941 for quarter one. And in previewing this, what you're going to see is a pre-filled out 941 form. We do also have options for outsourced payroll tax filing and payments. So instead of having to go to your ledger entries, reconcile everything, and then go to US tax reports to verify, print, and then upload those reports, you would instead just go to periodic processing after submitting a payroll batch. Go to payroll tax payments. Since the batch is open, this is the current tax liability that's being calculated. And if everything looks right, you would just simply click process. That notifies our team to be able to go in and make those payments for you. And that is payroll processing in Business Central at a high level. Now that we've looked at payroll, let's dive in and review our HR platform. To get us started, we're currently logged in as an HR admin with the highest permission set. You can view, edit, and remove these different charts depending on what is relevant to you and your company. If we scroll down, you'll see that we have a company announcement section on the left side that by default all users will be able to see. And on the right side, you'll see a configurable list of actions and pending reminders that are relevant to your managers and HR admins, such as documents that might need to be reviewed or certifications that might be expiring for your team. If we scroll back up, you'll then notice that we have these sections in the middle, which show different functions. Unlike what you may be used to with navigating an ERP system, we wanted to make sure that the HR platform was user friendly and intuitive so that way you and your team could easily navigate and interact with it. So each of these sections has groups of options that are tied together and function. Alternatively, you can click on the HR admin dropdown so that way you can see every option that you have access to and even search by a specific name. At Integrity Data, we are also aware of the importance of being able to manage online platforms using mobile devices. So everything that you see here today can be viewed and logged into on a mobile device. This is especially helpful for employees who may need to access or update their HR information quickly using their personal devices. One last important thing to note in regards to navigation is that you can type an employee's name at the top right in the employee search field to be able to filter all of the information on the screen down to that specific employee. So if we type in Pilar, for example, you'll see that it updates the employee summary to just be for this individual. So keep that in mind as we navigate the platform, and we'll start at the beginning of the employee journey with the company posting a job. When we click on hiring, you'll see two sections, applicant tracking and onboarding. This is because you can configure your own questions and form versions for each section. For applicant tracking, you'll be able to create your own list of questions that can be linked to a job posting. These questions can be configured to be yes or no, multiple choice, write in, and you can even have it be a specific date. You can also set these questions to be required or to be knockout questions with correct answers. If we take a step back, you'll also notice that we have an application version section. These application versions are going to be the heart of your job postings. This is where you're going to be able to fill in what information you want the applicants to complete, as well as link these specific questions and even upload any custom forms you may have. You can also include things like EEO disclaimers or document instructions for what you want to upload and minimum document requirements so that way they're adding the correct total number of documents whenever they're submitting their application. Now, after all that's built or configured and updated, you can go to job posting. Here in job posting, this is where you or other admins are going to see job posts that you have either created or associated with as a recruiter. Whenever we click on one here, you'll see that you can fill in the job description, title, and then also see statuses for the job itself, such as if it's currently open and when the original posting date was. You'll also notice that you can already link it to a particular position, department, or business group within the organization. So that way, any applicants that would be hired and go through the onboarding process are already actually in the correct business groups and departments for your organization in regards to this position. This is also where you can select those application versions so you're not having to specify and click all those individual questions. And then if we scroll down, you'll see that we have a recruiter section. This is basically what we call anybody that needs to be aware of the applicants for this job posting. So you can link this to like a direct hiring manager or say even an HR department head if they needed to be able to see this information. But again, this is just the group of people that are going to be the ones that see the applicants for this job. If we scroll down a little bit further in the job attribute section, you'll see that you can put things like the priority, the location, and the pay range. And we also have job case integration. So once this job is ready to be posted, it can either go to an internal created job board. You do have your own link as well as QR code to this job as well. Or you can post it on multiple websites such as Indeed, ZipRecruiter, or Glassdoor by using the native job case integration here. So we definitely want to provide a wide range of opportunities to be able to post the jobs in a way that meets you and your organization's needs. Now, once we have the job posted, we need to be able to manage those applicants. So that's where we're going to go now is to the applicant tracking dashboard. Now, let's click into an applicant's name so that way we can view their application. Here, you're not only going to be able to see their personal information, such as their contact details and their address, but you'll also be able to see things like their employment history, as well as their educational history. We did ask to collect information on their working conditions, as well as these other questions here, which were the custom ones that were associated with the job posting. And we did also collect EEO information. If we scroll down, we can see that we have some additional documents that were uploaded, such as this diploma. And if we click on it, we can actually see it here in real time what that diploma is, so that way you can view and verify the information that they added. And then if we scroll down, you'll be able to see that we have also collected an e-signature. And then at the very bottom, you can give this application a rating based on your initial impressions. Now, after you've been able to review an application, you've given it a rating, and it's time to make a determination on where this applicant's going to go in the hiring process, you'll manage that with these customizable workflows. So as you can see here, we have many different options, and these can be customized and configured to meet your business's needs. For the sake of this demo, I've pared it down to be about 6 steps, so that way we can go through a quick version of an applicant's journey. We'll see here in step 1 that the application has been completed. There's no actions to be able to complete here. But if we go to step 2 for the first interview, you are able to schedule an interview start and end time, as well as a location. You can add a workflow note as well as an applicant note, so that way you're communicating with the applicant, but also taking your own notes at the same time. After that interview, we are able to, of course, move on to a job offer. What's very nice about this is the fact that you can select a document to be able to upload and send for them to be able to review and sign, as well as the applicant offer body, where you expand and explain that offer in more detail. After that offer has been accepted, we'll then be able to go on to the prep onboarding stage. What's important about this stage is that it is going to be the steps where the admin fills in the employee information for them. This, of course, is going to include critical information like their salary. So whenever we click Save Changes here, a pop-up is going to come up where it's going to have you select some of the onboarding steps before you actually start that process. We'll dive a little bit more into that here in just a sec. You'll then also see that the status is updated in real time, and after the onboarding prep is complete, the applicant is going to move on to the onboarding dashboard. Taking a step back to the home screen, let's take a look at some of the onboarding features. So you are able to create your own question bank, similar to the applicant tracking, just no knockout questions this time, as well as a task list. Now, this task list is broken down for basically the steps that need to be completed for an onboarded employee. And as you can see here, we have it for things like full-time, part-time, rehire, seasonal, but you can have any sort of task list that you would want that could have a configurable onboarding step that might be a little bit different depending on what your organization's needs are. We do also have onboarding prep as its own button and then the onboarding dashboard. If you click onto onboarding prep, it's going to open up the same menu, but instead of it having be directly tied to an applicant in the applicant tracking dashboard, you can just fill in their information directly here instead and start the hiring process without them having to apply through a job directly. Now, in the onboarding dashboard, if we click into this, you're going to see a list of employees that are currently being onboarded and at the very least have been prepped by an admin. As you can see, the prep stat just means that the employee has been prepped, but they have not actually started their onboarding process. We do have onboarding started. And then once the employee has completed it and it's ready for approval, it'll be in this approval step. Let's take a look at an employee that's already filled in all the information so you can look at what a completed onboarding step looks like. So, a couple of things to note. Firstly, you'll see the associated task list. as well as any private or internal messages. You're also able to use the embedded National Crime Search feature for things like background checks as part of the onboarding process. Of course, their information does persist from the applicant tracking portion. So we already have things like their name, their address, and their contact information, but we're adding new information such as their social security number and their birth dates. If we move on, we do have additional details like their classification, as well as their listed salary information, benefits classes, and then, of course, employment as it fits within your organization. We do also add the reports to section here, which helps to define where they are at within the company structure. Going on further, we do have a dedicated section to emergency contact, and we do have custom questions that they can fill in. Next, for the more technical information, is they can complete their W-4s electronically, and then they do collect an e-signature, as well as their I-9s. And through the National Crime Search, we do have an e-verification option for their social security numbers as well. And after an employee completes their I-9 section, they're then able to set up their multiple direct deposits if they have them. They can specify whether they want it to be a percentage amount or a flat amount. And then we have the background check authorization with an e-signature. And then any custom documents that were set during onboarding can be associated here and filled out and signed by the employees as well. They're also able to upload and attach additional documents, such as this driver's license, similar to how we showed off in the applicant tracking section. And then after all of that's completed, they're able to certify that they have completed their onboarding with another final e-signature. And then the admin that is viewing their profile can come in and create a user. If they do the quick add, it's just going to fill in the information that they already have, such as their email and name. And then you're able to also specify additional details like their time zone. This is important because this step allows them to actually log in as a user to be able to view things like their pay stubs and update their information later. We do have user-defined and custom fields that can be set up so that way they can fill in some additional information. And we do have a direct integration that can be managed here if this employee is going to be part of our time tracking solution. Once everything is completed, you've verified it, all that is left is to either approve it or to reset the status. You'll reset the status if you notice that there is anything that might have been incorrect that the employee might need to be able to re-verify, update, or add. And then once that's ready to go, you'll just click approve. What's great about this approve button is that it will actually start a series of notifications that you will set up and configure for other members of your organization to be able to start the necessary steps for onboarding and hiring this individual once their application is approved. So not only will people like their immediate managers be notified, but you could also notify things like a benefits admin to start the onboarding process for their benefits enrollment, or maybe an IT admin to be able to assign equipment. Now that we've gone through the beginning of the employee life cycle with a hired employee, let's take a quick look at how we manage our benefits. Now, in clicking on benefits, we have a lot of different options for being able to customize and set up the benefits themselves. But fundamentally, what we're going to review today is setting up an individual plan and policy, looking at options for enrollment, and then at the end, we'll look at what the employee experience for open enrollment looks like. Here in the plan and policy section, you'll notice that we have many different policies as well as start, end dates, and if they're active. What's important about this is as you create these policies, you may need to reference them so you can not only have an effective date for when they start and if they're active, but you can also see future ones that you have set as you're able to create them and past ones if you ever needed to reference them. Let's start by taking a look at this core health insurance plan. In this policy, you'll be able to see not only the name and the code, but also the actual medical policy information. This does update and change as you select different policy or plan types. So if we go to 401k, for example, you'll notice that these questions update to gather 401k information. If we scroll down, you'll not only be able to see the additional notes, but also the eligibility and enrollment section. So you can add waiting rules, such as the first 30 days after the first month. You'll also be able to view the enrollment restrictions. The purpose of this is to either have an unrestricted plan that all employees enrolling can be able to choose from, or to restrict it based on your benefits classes. So, one that I like to show for this example is being able to say that this is a non union policy, and then you can have a union health plan that the other ones would not be able to select from. What's great about this is that the policy itself is already set up and restricted, so you don't need to have numerous amounts of open enrollment policies and assign those specific ones to the right employees. Instead, it's already going to be filtered by the employee's class. Then, if we scroll down just a little bit further, you'll see the payroll deduction information. So we already have the payroll codes here, the frequency, and the number of pay periods throughout the year that this deductions is going to be removed. You'll also see any documents that are attached. What's great about this is that as the employees are going through the enrollment process, they will be able to see these documents to be able to learn more about the plan and policy while they're selecting it. We can take just a quick look at that here. Last but not least is the pay rate and structure. We, of course, have options for free forms, so you can have things specified by just the employee or the employee with a dependent or a spouse. You will also be able to see if it's offered or not. We can then also do an age banded option. And then you can add those different rows. Once you have those policies set up and configured, all you have to do is to be able to manage and update them as things change. So you can even use an existing plan to copy it to be a template for a new plan, or maybe even the same plan for a following year. That way you're not having to refill in all of the information from scratch as I had just shown. Now, let's go back to the benefits section. Here, we're going to go to the open enrollment setup now. We have just a few open enrollment types. We have a full-time enrollment, a general open enrollment, and a new hire enrollment that is under a special enrollment class. Going to full-time, you'll not only be able to see the name of it, the start and end date of the enrollment period itself, but you'll also be able to include introduction statements, custom acknowledgement statements, and then what benefits are or aren't included on this plan. As I had shown in the policy, there's really no need to be able to limit this because you're already setting and configuring what an employee is going to be able to see based on their benefit class. But you can toggle these on or off if needed. Now, if we click into the new hire enrollment, if we scroll down to the bottom, everything looks the same except for the special enrollment section. Here, you'll be able to specify a specific employee to invite, the enrollment reason for their special enrollment, and then when that invitation date starts and ends, as well as when that coverage date specifically starts. So you're not having to rely on the open enrollment window to be able to easily hire and enroll an individual benefits. Now that we've taken a look at the benefits, let's review some options within the HR platform for being able to manage employees throughout the year. To start, let's go to expenses. Here, our expense manager allows you to customize the expense types. For example, we have cell phones, job fairs, and supply reimbursement added for ours. If we click into these expense types, you can even see that we can specify if it's mileage and what that mileage rate might be. If we go back to expense, this is where we can go to the expense detail. This section allows admins to either add an expense themselves or view pending expenses submitted by employees. So if we click New, for example, you'll be able to select who the employee is, what the expense type is, the description, the vendor if applicable, the total amount, and if it's billable to a client. You can also attach documents such as receipts, and these can be taken with a picture from their phone and applied and added to this section very easily. And to review a complete report here, now once these expense details have been created and submitted, you'll go to the expense report section to be able to view and approve them. So you can download the full report, you can click into it to view it, and then you can see its status and or change it so that way it is approved, denied, or pending. Moving on to the company section, we have several places that you can set up specific types of information such as achievements, certificates, classes, custom forms, licenses. To take just a quick review at these, if we go into achievement, for example, you can see different custom types of achievements that have been created for this company, the codes associated with them, and this applies for pretty much anything that you would set up. Same thing with the certificates, for example, or even the licenses. Now, once these have been set, these are options that you and your employees can select from whenever interacting with these things. So if we go into the employee achievement section, for example, you can see that this employee was awarded the Never Late achievement. This is especially helpful whenever it comes to managing things such as certificates, as well as licenses. This allows you to not only store this information electronically, but also to set things like expiration dates. So that way you and their managers can be notified whenever an applicable license or certification may be coming up to expire. So that way you can take the necessary steps to renew it. It's also very handy to have all of this in one place for reporting purposes and just data transparency in general. So that way you're not having to rely on Excel spreadsheets or downloaded documents on a particular computer. We do also have a review section where you can customize and specify the different types of reviews. These can be incredibly helpful because you can include documents, have any sort of internal messaging, as well as structure for specific questions. And then once these reviews are assigned, they'll be assigned on a scheduled basis. And the managers and employees will be able to interact with these to both answer the questions and fill out the documents. And then these reviews will be saved and stored within the system for you to be able to reference later. If we go to the employee section and then to the review area, you'll be able to schedule reviews for employees based on the ones that you just created. So you can select that review type, have it even be automatically applied months from hire. So we'll say 6 months in this case, or even have it be a fixed date. And then on the section here where you're able to choose the employees, you can either have it be a specific employee, a specific position type, department, or business group. So let's go by department. And then we can schedule that review. If we click into an existing one, you can see that it's already been scheduled. You have the reviewer and the locations. You can also see what the notes were for the reviewer and any private notes, any attached documents that were completed, and then, of course, the answers to any of their questions. Similar to the review section, we are able to create and assign classes. Now, it's an important distinction to note that we aren't an LMS software, but we're close. You're able to create your own classes and specify the title and description, as well as time and location. If we click into this one as an example, You'll see that in this description, we even have hyperlinks to the different areas that they'll be going for the class. You can include details like the instructor, duration, time, and location. You're also able to say if this class is open or closed, and then attach even other additional documents that might be relevant for the employees to be able to see in regard to this class. Now, once this class is created and you go back to the employee section to assign it, you can either add a new individual employee for a specific class, or you can use the mass enroll option to be able to select the class as well as the expiration date. And then you can either select employees individually one at a time, or you can have them added by department. After an employee is assigned that class, you'll be able to click into it and they can interact with and see any of these hyperlinks as well as any of those attached documents. They'll be able to add their grade and completion date, sign their acknowledgement, and add any notes. And then you can see and store this information for updating things like their certifications. And just to take a quick look at what this can be, if we click here to start this course, this would be the employee experience where they can then start this. Now that we've reviewed the employee journey and different ways to manage their information and update them within the platform itself, let's take a quick look at the reports section. Here we do have reporting and auditing options. For reports, let's start with the standard reports. You'll notice that we have many different standard reports by default that you have access to. Taking a quick look at one such as this audit list, you'll be able to edit and change any of the descriptions as well as the category if you needed to. But you can just come here and press execute the report, select any specific date range if you wanted to, and then execute it. You'll also have access in many of these reports to be able to make on-the-fly adjustments to the information that you're viewing, such as if you needed to see anything from next year or any previous information. You can also filter it by specific employee if need be as well. Taking a step back to the report section, you are able to create your own custom reports. This would be set up and configured during implementation, so that way you have access to the same information that you were already using in your current system within this one in a saved report that you don't have to rebuild every time. We do also have a quick report writer and viewer. So if we go to the quick report writer, you have access to changing any of the fields needed to be able to view the specific information that is relevant for the report. Again, these are custom reports that you can create and save, so that way you're not having to go in here and make your own report every single time. And at a high level, that is the view of the admin permissions and settings within our HR system. Let's take a quick look at what the employee experience looks like so that way you can know what your employees can expect. We'll simply log out. This is what the employee experience looks like. On the left side, they're able to view their company announcements. They're also able to view their employee services section. Here in employee services, they can see anything that might be time sensitive that they need to take an action on, such as an upcoming review or an expiring certification. They're also able to see their My HR section instead of the HR admin section. What's nice about this is that they're able to see their personal details and update and view information in real time. We like to use the example of an employee on the weekend trying to apply for and get a car loan. In this case, they might need to take a look at their pay history and be able to see any of their current pay stubs. After viewing those pay stubs and being able to sign that car loan, maybe they need to submit a direct deposit change request so that way they can have multiple direct deposits going into the right account for the correct amounts to be able to make that car loan. After that's been updated, they might need to change their W-4 because they have to add a dependent while they're already in the system. All of these changes can be easily navigated to, completed in real time, collected with employee signatures, and then submitted for requests to be approved by an admin. They can also view things like their achievements, certificates, classes, I-9s, and licenses within the system. And then here, they can even go in and update and download that information if they needed to. They can also go to expense details to create and submit an expense report. And last but not least, of course, the employees themselves can go to the open enrollment section within their view. Here they'll see the open enrollment options that they have. In this case, since it's a demo, we have multiple. Typically, they'll just see the one that they're assigned. We'll go to full-time enrollment. We'll have a brief introduction that they can read through. They will fill in their personal information. As you can see, it's already completed and filled in based on their profile data, but they can update anything they may need to. They can also add a dependent along with their contact information. And then they move on to selecting their benefits. Here, you can see what it looks like if they do or don't include their spouse and what those costs can be. They're also able to click on and navigate to any open documents that we have attached, so that way they can learn more about and save that plan. They're also, of course, able to decline any coverage if they needed to. And then they can add separate beneficiaries that are different from their dependents as well. And as you can see with the Roth versus traditional 401k, you can have multiple plans that they can select from. It will show the different cost as well as when the coverage date's going to be. Finally, in the review section, they're able to view what they've elected for and what the costs are going to be per paycheck. They're also able to select a reason to why they're waiving coverage. And after they have selected reasons for all things, they can authorize it, sign it, and then submit it. And then for the rest of the open enrollment window that they have, they can make changes to it before it closes in case they change their mind or need to update something. And at a high level, that is the employee experience as well as what our HR software has to offer. Now that we've looked at payroll and HR, let's wrap this up by reviewing our time tracking experience. Before we jump into the platform itself, a couple of important things to note are that the user experience is highly configurable to your employees' and businesses' needs. The experience as you see it today is for a web application, but employees can be allowed to clock in and out from their phone, a stationary web device like an office computer or tablet, and we even have options for purchasing biometric-based time clocks and badges that can be used to clock in and out from those devices. With that being said, let's look at several employee experiences today to show just a couple of common configurations that you can use to have your team record their time. Let's start with the most simple employee experience that I've configured for today. Once the employee is ready to start their shift and they're at the device that they'll clock in on, it'll ask them for their ID. You can configure this to say badge ID as I have here, but this phrase is set by the company and can be the same as their employee ID. For this example, the employee's ID is 21. Now that we've logged in, you can see that the employee only has 4 options: to clock in and out, view their time cards, and to log off. When we'll clock in, you'll see that the punch has been accepted, but then it will automatically log them off. This is an option that I have set because in this scenario, the employee is using a shared device. You want them to be able to clock in and out quickly, and you don't want the next employee in line to accidentally use the previous one's profile. Now, let's look at a slightly different setup that is still aimed at gathering hourly time. We'll clock in using a different employee ID, this one being 11. In this experience, you can see the employee has more options to choose from. While they can still start and end their shift, they can now also submit PTO requests, as well as start and end their lunches and breaks. And they even have the option to transfer. When we start the employee shifts, you'll notice that there are going to be three questions that are asked. For this demo, you'll see that it is asked in the order of job, task, and position. But you can configure these as well as the different options that they can choose from to match what your business requirements are. Typically, this feature is used to gather needed project data so that way you can compile that and compare it to the employee's time. We also give the option of selecting different tasks while clocked in, and that's what the transfer option's for. So in this case, we're going to select job 101. The task is going to be concrete pour, and the position will be labor. And then if sometime later this employee needed to transfer or change that task, they can just click on this button here, and they can select a different job with its own tasks and their own position. And now this is all associated within the same time card, so that way you only need the one time card to collect different types of project data throughout the day. We also gave this employee the ability to view their PTO banks and submit PTO requests. If we click on the burger up here, they can click on PTO banks and see the three different policies that they currently have access to, in this case being personal, sick, and vacation, and the number of hours associated with those. Then they can either click on PTO request list here or go back to their main experience and click on PTO request to get to this screen. In the calendar view, as you can see, they can see their pending, approved, and rejected PTO requests. They can also go to just a blank list so that way they can see it without the calendar experience. Let's add a new PTO request. Here, the employees will be able to select what date this request starts. We'll go to August, as well as the number of hours per day that will be used. In this case, we'll do 8 for an all-day PTO request. Now, if they needed to submit a partial time, they can absolutely do that. So we can just update this time to be at 2:30, and then we can say that they need 2 hours deducted for a doctor's visit. They will also see the different PTO banks that they have access to, as well as the number of hours remaining in that bank. Once everything looks correct, they can generate that request, review it one last time, and then confirm it. Now, once this request has been confirmed, they can view that here. They can also edit it or delete it before their managers have a chance to review them in case they need to make any quick tweaks. Lastly, this employee also has the ability to view and approve their timesheets. So if we go back to a previous pay period, they can see the different times that they had clocked in and out, and then they can simply click approve. We do have an attestation turned on, which can be turned off or configured to your company. And now that has been submitted. Now the employee can revert that, and of course they can communicate with their manager to be sure that everything is up to date and correct. And then once they end their shift, it can automatically log them out. In this case, we're just going to log off. For the last employee experience that we're going to review today, we're going to take a look at what a salary employee might look like. Now, for this individual, we do have it set so that way they can enter their own time on a weekly basis. So they can even have a template that they save and load. For this example, I do still have it asking for the different job options so that way they can job cost to their salary time. And then they can select bulk time and the number of hours worked. They can also select when it starts. Just doing 8 a.m. for all of these. And now you'll notice that there's no more update in the UI and that they have 40 hours. Once everything's correct, they'll have the option to click this green check mark. And now their time is submitted. They can delete this time, add new time, add different hours or shifts throughout the day, so that way it's collecting it, But this way, the salary employee can still add project data to their time cards. This is also helpful in case you wanted these salary employees to be able to view and request their PTO as we just showed as well. And of course, they can also approve their time cards as we had shown before. A final important fact to note is that every example that we shared today is a part of the same test company. This means that you aren't restricted to a single way to clock in and out, and you can configure multiple time clock experiences based on your employees' needs. These assignments can be updated and configured at any time by your assigned company administrators so that you aren't locked into just one way of doing things and you still have the autonomy that you need to make the changes as they need to be updated. Thank you for taking the time to review our platform with me today.